Anupama. Yeah. Can we start with Anupama? Yeah.
Well, actually, after I studied in FTI, but after that, by then digital had come. So I haven't actually. I've only during film school I worked on film. After that, post that it's been digital, and so I finished in 2001 from FTI, and that was really the time when it was shifting to mini DV and so on. And so that was actually extremely liberating because in 2001, February I finished FTI, and by October I had a film from PSBT to direct independently. So I have assisted only one person. I didn't have to have the so-called struggle which previous generations, especially in the 80s and 90s, film graduates had to, because just to access the medium of film and to get a chance to make your own film was so much more difficult. So I think that was really a blessing in terms of the creative freedom that one got in working in documentaries, A, and B, with digital technologies. And soon, like after a couple of films, I started, even though I'm not trained in cinematography or editing, I started doing both. And so it became much more personal, and as an artist gave you much more freedom. So I think that has been extremely liberating for me personally. And also because for me the most important thing always has been that creative freedom. And so even if it was small budgets, as we are all well aware of PSBT, but we could just make whatever we wanted to, frankly. And I think increasingly those spaces are becoming limited. And so one does look at those times also with a kind of fondness, even though the budgets were extremely low.
But then we didn't know better, so we didn't think they were so low.
And also the thing is, I think one was just happy that you got to do what you wanted to without any interference. And that's really unbelievably great. So,
Anirban, to you, I think specifically, I want to, because of your interest in sound design and how, so even with sound design, there's been such a change in technology. But is this something also you always, I know you did still photography and photo essays, so something your interest in sound, has it always been there, or has it developed as you have worked in films over the
years? First of all, just to kind of take off from where Anupama left, so my starting in films started with celluloid, but I also made films with low band, high band, beta, digibeta. So before the digital technology completely took over, there was a period where many interesting work was done with tapes. So I made my first film with beta, and it was liberating. But from the beginning, I always felt that cinema has two parts to it. One, of course, we are so obsessed with the camera, but we don't pay enough attention to the sound. So whether it was working with beta or high band beta, or later going on to digital, I always used to work in a collaborative way, and in that I had a camera person, and most of the time 99.9% had a sound recordist. And later on, when I did not have money to hire a sound person, I learned sound recording myself. And I had very generous friends from FTI who were always willing to teach me. So they taught me when we were putting our feed from the mono microphone into the camera, to the mixers coming in, then the recorders coming in. So I self-taught myself, so that even if we could not have a sound recordist, the sound was not compromised. And it has been a very, very important creative journey for me to understand, as we understood the lensing, how to look at things, but also to how to hear things. So it's not only enough to put a lapel to record, but to how do you bring in the environment where the character or the story is unfolding into your cinema. So I am very, very obsessed with that, and that process has continued.
That has also changed over the years with technology?
I personally feel sound technology, of course, has evolved quite a bit from the days of Nagra to now we can record on so many channels, etc. But I sometimes do miss the warmth of some of the older microphones that we were using. Yeah, definitely recording like our film which was at Sundance Nocturnes, there we used extensive sound recording devices from 360-degree microphone to 5.1 microphones to clip microphones that we put on screens to record sounds of moths. I don't think we could have done that in the previous time, like working with at times 8 microphones of multiple things. So yeah, of course, the digital technology has given us this opportunity to explore sound in a very interesting way. But I also keep falling back. I am obsessed with analog sound as well. So I keep falling back. I love to record Indian classical music or music with very simple, clean one mic recordings where you place instruments in a certain way. So there is some beauty to that as well. So I think it's an aesthetic choice in terms of how you are going to use sound in your work.
I was also referring to the post-production where sound is also non-linear now and what all you can do with it. But
oh, of course.
Yeah, I think that's
Shriyank is here, who has worked on both the films, Flickering Lights and Nocturnes. I think the digital post and working on Pro Tools has completely opened up, and especially this time the Nocturnes we did Dolby Atmos. So that kind of created a whole different universe. Yeah, absolutely, because from 5.1 to going into Atmos, what we could achieve, what we could dream of was just extraordinary. I don't think we could have done it in the time when we were working with celluloid or with tapes.
Sushmit, coming to you. So, from a situation where he's placed 8 mics, I know you had a very small crew and very small team where he and his partner Rintu have pretty much done all the sound and the shooting for Writing with Fire. But Sushmit, you've also been making films for the last 15 years, and we've all kind of grown from the same funders who've been funding. So what was different with the kind of support you got for Writing with Fire, and what do you think was, just different in that journey?
I think we'd been making films for about a decade before we decided to embark on Writing with Fire. Until then, we'd become specialists in short form storytelling, with Writing with Fire, I feel our ambitions were more international, because in India, there is only a certain kind of play that a feature documentary would have. There are no distribution so you have to go international to raise the funds. And internationally, there are all of these spaces that allow you to imagine a certain kind of a film. Because if you're going to spend half a decade of your life invested in a story with no idea whether or not this is going to eventually play in a festival, that's a huge risk. But funds and film funds that support artists are willing to take that risk, hedge that bet on you. And I think the big learning for me personally was really understanding the role of a documentary producer, because that standalone role does not exist in India, ironically. One of the largest film producing markets in the world, and over the last, I would say, 6-7 years, the kind of non-fiction that has gone out into the world and the kind of stamp that documentary filmmakers have So I feel that it's just a much more expansive way of looking at your projects, and this whole idea of understanding how to produce a documentary, which I feel is a critical gap in India, that is slowly but steadily shifting as more of us are coming back with our own experiences, but also sort of like opening up this information to this new cohort of filmmakers going out. That's changing, and I think that's also having an impact on the language of storytelling here. Before, I remember with PSBT, you would maybe film for 7, 8, 9 days at max if you're working with the crew, and if you're not filming or... And I think one of the interesting things about the PSBT model was you were forced to become the camera person, director, producer, sound recordist, editor, because you want to save money, you know? And that was a skill set that is great. But imagine working with a crew where you have technical roles who have specialized in, you know, working with someone who has that kind of understanding of sound and is able to bring... I think that is what happens when you are actually working with bigger budgets or going international and collaborating with international artists as well. I feel that has been something that has been super interesting, which a certain generation didn't have access to, and a lot of this...
Both funding and the mentorship that you got from...
not even, I would say, just being able to work with, say, a sound designer based in Finland, or to work with an editing consultant based in Germany, where you are coming into these stories that you're telling, which are very Indian stories, but they are coming in with their very sophisticated level of craft. And a lot of times what happens is that when you've been working on a film for too long, it becomes sticky, and you want someone who's outside the Indian context to just tell you, it's not working. You're too emotionally attached to this shot because it took you 2 months to get this scene. But it is not, it's extra fat, you know? And also just to be able to have a dialogue about storytelling, nuances, and the mechanics of, I feel that's a great learning. And yeah, so it's about, I think, looking outside this country, I would say, the budgets are very different. The budgets that, if you're able to, and again, the big point over here is, say budgets that you're raising through all of these film funds are highly, highly competitive. So the Sundance grant, you have about 6,000 to 7,000 applications going in for a grant pool of about 10 films from across the world that will get that grant. That's an insane ratio. But if you are able to get that fund, you also get access to the knowledge pool, to other filmmakers. You can always reach out to these funders and say, I'm stuck here. Can I please speak to a producer? Because I don't know how to negotiate this contract. And that, I think, are the doors and pathways that open up where you're able to build.
So, this is going to be a big chunk of what we'll talk about, but maybe if we just take a step back, what is that stepping stone that has allowed the three of you to move outside? When I saw it, would you say Doc Edge has been the principal platform? So Doc Edge is this platform in Calcutta, set up maybe 2003 was their first time, which allows for co-production, collaborations, pitching, mentorship with producers and sales agents from all over the world. So was that the stepping stone for you and for you?
I think Doc Edge played a very, very important role in opening up the possibilities of collaboration and co-production, and also to show us the horizon beyond, I would say, the PSBT FD horizon, that there was this other possibility, and there were people who were doing international co-productions, and I'll name a few. I know that in growing up in 80s and 90s in Calcutta, I knew Ranjan Palit and Ruchir Joshi was doing work for Channel 4 and BBC, and it has happened in Calcutta before. I know there were films that were made in Bombay at that time, people who were doing. It's not that the co-production Nishtha was doing, Sunishtha Jain. So it's not that it was not happening, but Doc Edge created a platform where we knew that we could put in an idea, and if we selected, our ideas would be heard by a pool of people who were coming to engage with us. So that was a big, so we didn't have to travel outside India to meet those people. People were coming there. So Doc Edge played a very important role in revolutionizing that. But I would say Doc Edge was just a starting point. Somebody like Sushmit or Shaunak, these are also exceptional filmmakers who have multiple skills that I would like to talk about. One of the things is that how do you write a proposal? How do you structure your proposal so that the funders like Sundance or a Doc Society or your co-production partners are going to be able to understand what you are trying to communicate? because what we are sending to them is only 5 to 7 minutes of visual clip. Writing is a very, very important part, as important possibly for documentaries, for non-fiction, as it is for fiction. I think this is not emphasized enough. It's not important that you have to write in English. You can write in any language and it can be translated. I think writing proposal, communicating your ideas is very important. And after that, there are this which Sushmit talked about, which is that what are those producing skills we don't have, where we get up to a point when we go into a second round, we don't know what to do. We are asked, give us a financing plan for your project. And we start looking at each other. What is a financing plan? How do you budget a documentary? We were never taught, we don't know how to budget a documentary properly. We don't know what is a finance plan. Then in the second round of whether it's a Sundance or in ITFA, we are asked, what is your distribution strategy? Now these are things that we don't know about. And slowly, from talking to A person, B person, all of us have learned it that way. But I think it is very important for spaces like this, where we have conversations so that the new pool of filmmakers don't need to spend the 10 years or 15 years that we spent before for, kind of understanding, so that they can learn from what we have learned and they can do it in much shorter period.
I just want to add a little bit more about the creative side of this, because I was a kind of person who was quite happy making very low budget films, as I said, doing everything on my own. And the reason for doing everything on my own was not always budgetary, is because I just loved doing camera and editing. I was like, it saved me so much time in terms of explaining what I wanted to do, because in documentary often you're responding to a moment and there's no time to like talk to a camera person or whatever. So it's like I wanted that a joy actually of being present with the camera during the making of the image, and so I was quite happy doing that. And in 2015, Anirban and I started working together, and he was somebody who was keen to, he was looking at international this thing and dockage and so on, and and I was, to be very honest, extremely skeptical of this. And because I was like, I've been making films for over 10 years, 15 years, whatever, and do I really want to go and present my idea in 7 minutes to a panel who's predominantly from the West at that time? Maybe 1 or 2 Koreans or Japanese people were there, and no Indians at that point when we pitched the first time, Sushmit, in 2017. So there was also this feeling of, are we sort of, compromising our way of making films? Are we sort of succumbing to an international or a Eurocentric or America-centric way of making films? How do you keep your own indigenous voice as filmmakers? So that was a very, very strong concern. And how do we, why should we keep selling? Because I was totally against this idea that before you've made anything, you have to start selling it. And I was like, it was really abhorrent to me. So, and then I was like, okay, then we went for the pitch, and then we were like, okay, once we are in this, let's play the game. So we did it, and we had a very successful pitch, strangely, for Flickering Lights. And then slowly as I moved forward in this direction, I figured out that how do you keep your artistic integrity and at the same time make use of the opportunities. And I want to stress this because often with younger filmmakers, it's like, your co-producer saying something and the funder is saying something, so let's just do it, So I think because we entered the thing when we were more mature as artists, it was easier to say no to many things with whom we didn't align artistically. And then to find those few people, and that's enough. We don't need 20 people to accept your proposal or to become your, you need one co-producer or 2 co-producers. So I think to find the right partners who will nurture your idea and respect you without seeing the color of your skin or the country you come from, that for me has been absolutely the the crucial thing. And fortunately, in the case of Nocturnes, we had a lot of American partners, and while the American documentary is not something I've been inspired by, fiction or non-fiction, but the kind of respect that we got and saying, do what you want, you know. And so again, I come back because for me that has been the only thing that matters. Like whether it's PSBT or whether it's, you know, Sandbox films, which are you know, this is much better funded. Like he was saying that when you go to international market, it's much better funded. But that bottom line has to be met, that you are not being dictated to.
I hear you completely, Anupama. I had a very similar experience and fear when I went to Dockets for the first time. And I was told that, oh, what's the conflict? Is there a caste angle? They wanted to have a caste angle in a society which is actually pretty casteless. I was talking about Kur. So I was a bit taken aback, but at the same time, very impressed and inspired to move ahead. So coming to talking about co-productions, and also the fact that now the last maybe 10 years or so, many different countries are also co-producing at the same time, not just funding organizations. And here I'm going to put Sushmit in the spot and actually read out the 12 organizations that have supported his film. There's Sundance, Itfa Bertha, Chicken and Egg, Tribeca, Alter Cine, SF Filmmakers, Finnish Film Foundation, Sorfon, ABEC, Submarine, Outlook Film Sales. So how are they all coming in? I'm sure at different points, but then are they all also considered co-producers, or some are funders, some are producers?
So that list is a mix of film funds, who are the best partners to have on a project, because they're more like, after this pool of what Anirban was talking about, writing your applications, etc., if you get shortlisted, you get the money. And that money can range from anywhere between, I would say, $5,000 for a research, all the way up to $45,000 to $50,000 for production or post-production for your project. And then there are broadcasters. Now, again, this is the thing. There are different kinds of models of acquiring a project. So sometimes people will come in as you're pitching the project or as the film is being made for something called a pre-sale, where they'll give you a certain amount of money. And typically for Europeans, this ranges from 4,000 to 7,000 euros. But funnily enough, in our case, that money only saw the light of day after the film premiered at Sundance, which is weird because if you're making a pre-sale, you need the money for the production, you know, of the film. But those are also things you learn, because now if someone were to make a pre-sale, it would be like, can you give me the money? Because I'm, you know, first time mistakes, yeah. Then there are also the major chunk of money can be raised through co-productions, where a partner, typically another production house based in another country, either North America or Europe, those are the key sectors, will come on board to partner with you and raise funds from their country of origin. वो भी बहुत complicated है. If you're in Europe, they might raise a substantial sum of money with the rider that you have to spend that money within the geography of, say, France or on French talent, which is crazy. Exactly. So, but that's also how colonial the model is, you know, and you have to find your ways to work around it. So we worked with 2 minority co-producers based out of Europe, but we insisted that the money come into India to pay Indian talent. But that takes a lot of time and negotiation. But I also feel like it's what Anirban and Anupama said, that I think if you can focus on building strong relationships with partners who see your vision and the artistic possibility of your story, they will fight for you wherever they need to. Outlook and Submarine were sales agents. Their job is to, once the film is done, make the sale. So there's a range of like partners who come on board through the course of the birthing of a film, and it's all. It sounds complicated, but once you get into it, it's not that complicated also. But I think as Indians, we are also taught to be very humble, not to negotiate, not to ask too many questions, etc., etc. So, जो मिल गया खुश हो जाओ, इतना ही मिला है. इस documentary ecosystem में जहाँ आपको बताया जाता है कि you are not the producer, we are the producers and we own everything. But to be told, you're the producer. But more importantly, to be told, and this happens a lot in the US, that you are the artist. And I think that is something that I had not experienced here. यहाँ पे कोई आपको artist का दर्जा नहीं देता है, वहाँ मिलता है, and that is something that is a completely different absorption of your own sense of self. यार मैं तो artist हूँ, you know, and I think it's a completely different conversation. But yeah, it's hard negotiation for your own rights and the way you want to tell the story and to stick to it, because sometimes there's a lot of easy money on the table if you change the narrative or if it is told in a certain way.
I mean, I keep hearing the two words time and negotiation from both of you, and I know it's taken like some 7 years for you from the start of the film to bring it out, and maybe just talk a little bit about what is that, you know, where does that perseverance come from? Are there small rewards that come on the way? What is it that keeps you going? Because, and what allows you to keep reworking the film, going back to shoot? I mean, in Sushmit's case, literally it was COVID, because of which they stopped shooting. Otherwise, they kept shooting. So just, you know, to share some light on that.
So,